Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to the Shadow and Sun Show. And today I'm going to be reviewing both the Qadim Arabian Adventures handbook and the complete Shayar's handbook. I hope I pronounced that right, but if I didn't, who cares, right? Um, as you guys know, we're doing a tribute to Ray Harryhausen, and we're starting it off mostly with the Sinbad movies, and I thought, what better way to complement that video from last night than with the actual Arabian Adventures handbook from second edition Advanced Dungeons and Dragons. I really love these books. This one more so than the next one, but that's just a personal taste issue. In this book, I found a whole lot of absolutely useful information in not just one but several of my game worlds where I do in fact have desert societies that are loosely based on things found in the 1001 Arabian Nights, as well as the Qadim and the Harryhausen movies, and you know other things that all just make for a great Arabian Nights type story. One of my campaigns actually spent a great deal of time in that area, and I wish I would have had these books at the time, but I had to make do with what I had. And fortunately, the Ray Harryhausen movies were available for me to draw inspiration from. And let's get right into my usual table of contents review of the first book. There isn't a lot of great four-color artwork. I think because they went and chose to... Here, let me show you real quick. All of the borders of the pages have this probably expensive copper metallic border, which is really nice, but completely, in my opinion, more or less a waste of time. I would have rather seen more of the color illustrations, and I'm going to show you just a couple of those because that's really all there are, is a couple of them in the book, which, like I said before, it is a real shame because the artwork is beautiful, very evocative, and absolutely shows in great detail what you should be striving for as a dungeon master while making an Arabian Nights flavored adventure. Let me just go to a couple of the pieces of artwork. I think the first one is actually my favorite. This gold, copper, what have you, bronze or brass, mechanical dragon-like creature I found to be quite interesting, as well as the hero bedecked in all kinds of colorful attire, and he looks to be quite wealthy from the number of gems and jewelry he's sporting in this particular picture. And then this one's also very, very nice. You've got your Arabian style Sinbad-like thief, maybe Alibaba, sneaking into an ogre's lair, just decked full of treasure. Maybe he's not an ogre, maybe he's some sort of genie or something like that. I think he looks more like an ogre to me. But that's quite a haul. The ogres that I usually throw at parties don't have half that kind of loot. It's usually a lot less. And then we'll just do one more and get on with the show. Looks like there's only about 5 full color pages of artwork, and I can't seem to find this one for the life of me. And here we go, a nice genie to end it all on. And back to the table of contents. Chapter 1, The Land of Fate, gives you everything you'd expect to immerse yourself in the world of Qadim, the people, the honor structure, family, and all that sort of thing. It is really nice because it really tends to point your characters and everybody in the society in a good aligned fashion, which I'm always a big fan of. We can't really seem to get enough of that in the real world. Then chapter 2, characters, the ability scores, the races, and all that sort of stuff, which is, pretty much unlimited in just about anything you'd want, other than whatever limitations were in the original second edition player's handbook. But as you guys know, I'm a bigger fan of first edition, with a few exceptions. I do sort of mix my first and second AD&D together. Then the chapter 3, which are kits, which are all the different sort of subclasses of each of the 4 food groups, that being, fighter, cleric, wizard, and thief, and all the different, like I said, types of each of those categories. I liked a lot of them, but I liked them more as NPCs. I could see how most of my players, at least, would probably shy away from anything other than more or less your standard fighter types of old. Maybe not so much as the fighters and the thieves. I could see players wanting to play more of the regular fighters and thieves. But the wizards and clerics are very, very fine-tuned specializations with very, very narrow fields of operation, which I know my players tend to really want to be the jack of all trades when it comes to the wizard, and when it comes to the clerics or priests, they've got their own, religious concepts in mind and really want to stick to that. Unless I was starting a first level party in Qadim, I really don't see a lot of use for those particular classes and subclasses. Then the proficiencies, which is chapter 4, a lot of new proficiencies that really should have been in the other books, but they're a little bit more prevalent in Qadim. Like things like haggling, which is a really big deal, but at the same time, I could see it being a skill that certain other characters would want to have early on, just to save them that extra silver piece here and there, if not when it comes to buying the really larger magic items, if you allow that. Also things like genie lore and a few other proficiencies. For the most part, again, I think almost all of these could have been left in the player's handbook. Chapter 5, Perils of Adventure, Armor, Desert Survival, Calling on Fate, The Evil Eye, all of which are clearly definitely more for this particular campaign, needing rules for the horrible effects of trying to wear full plate in the desert. If any of you have ever spent any extended time in any deserts, you know that it doesn't take long till you're down to your skivvies, and that's and that's still too hot, but modesty must prevail. The obvious desert survival, I think that's pretty well covered in most of the survival guides and the other proficiency sections. But Calling on Fate and The Evil Eye, definitely two nice little spices to add to this particular campaign. Then Chapter 6, At the Bazaar, the equipment lists and the equipment descriptions for all the different kinds of things. It's nice because it allows the players to learn the names of the different articles of clothing, besides just turban and fez that are in our lexicon and we all know pretty well, but all the other items that are going to be home to Qadim. Then Chapter 7, the Shiar abilities. If you guys don't know, Shiar is basically more or less a genie master, which I could see possibly some of the wizards that were in the 2 Sinbad movies that we review being more like that than actual Merlin type wizards. But at the same time, I really wasn't a big fan of them giving up their spell abilities and other things for the ability to manipulate and summon different kinds of genies with kind of a heavy maximum limit, I think, of 5 overall in their lifetime. But the rules are, there's all kinds of different subcategories of those kinds of summoning abilities. And for the most part, I was really just not a big fan of it. But they would make for a great NPC, good guy or bad guy. Your mileage may vary. I hope you guys can, maybe point me in the right direction as to what I'm missing, as to why they made an entire handbook on them. Then, of course, the Chapter 8 wizard spells. Not really a lot of new spells, and to be honest, they're probably in the complete spell compendium. But it's nice to have them here in context for things like sand and wind that are going to obviously be manipulated by wizards in these campaigns a lot more than, and of course maybe water, than other spells just because it's native to the area, and I could really see those being a way to really add a lot more Arabian Nights feel and flavor to the campaign. Then the wizard spell by province, the indexes, the glossary, and obviously a chapter to help you find the tables. And that pretty much sums up this book. I really, really enjoy it. I really appreciate it. I am not going to appropriate it as some people may fear. I absolutely have a great amount of respect for this type of fantasy literature. And if you've ever perused the Dungeon Master's Guide, especially the old one, and you've seen things like the gin ring, the Afridi bottle, the flying carpet, wish rings, and so many other magic items were directly pulled from 1001 Arabian Nights or other stories, and how you could want to add those into your game with not at least nod a little bit of homage to all of those great stories. There are a ton of ways we can all benefit from this mythology or fantasy literature, and I hope you guys will give it a try. Now on to the Shiar's Handbook. As you already know, I'm not a huge fan of this book, just because I really didn't appreciate the ability or abilities of the Shiar foregoing their spells a day to have the ability to summon jinn. Now maybe in the particular context of this campaign setting, those types of powers are, I kind of want to say akin to their version of demon and devil summoning. Not in the way you might immediately think, but similar also to just being able to summon elementals, or for the good aligned characters to call upon your god, to have them send angels or Valkyries or what have you to give you a helping hand. Now, the artwork in here is mostly black and white line art, which I am a huge fan of, and to be honest, I got more of a kick out of it than actually the color art in the previous book, just because I'm such a huge fan of the skill that it takes to be able to come up with and really pull off just all black and white artwork. And I'm not going to bother showing you any of the actual artwork because it just would take just a little bit too much time, and you probably wouldn't get the full effect as I did reading it. Chapter 1 is the magicians. There are obviously a school of wizard for each of the 4 elements, as well as information on the sorcerer's duel, which I found very, very intriguing. Rules for organized combat between 2 wizards to settle dispute. Just sounds like, a great way to really throw some magic into a campaign without really stepping on the toes of the old Disney Sword in the Stone movie, because that was just I think more of a joke than anything else when it comes to that particular wizard duel. But having maybe even arena type events where 2 wizards will come in toward the end of the show and settle their dispute, and people can vote or gamble on who they think is going to win, etc. It just seemed like a really, really interesting way to get wizards to get a little bit more action and just throw a little bit more interest into the magical aspects of really any kind of game you can come across. Then more explanation on the Shiar and their gens, which are their, I guess, familiars, and their overall abilities, not just to be able to summon the big genies when they get higher level, but all the little steps in between. Then chapter 2, which I found to be probably my favorite chapter of really the 4 chapters in this book, which were the wizard kits. There are, I want to say, close to a dozen different wizard kits. The Astrologer was kind of interesting. Their ability to hang spells on the constellation. I couldn't help thinking back to the Amber novels and their hanging spells and making it faster to cast just by having to just say one word or one symbol or what have you and get a much quicker spell casting, you know, off instead of it taking, a full round. It might only take a second or two to get that spell out just by putting in the missing details. The Clockwork Mage, honestly, it's basically techno magic, as per so many other RPG games, where the wizard makes a device that holds the magic as opposed to actually being able to just cast the spell normally. I find that kind of counterintuitive. To me, it seems like you'd need to know the spell before you could put the spell in the device. But that being said, it's still a great way to get some, not just new magic items into the game, but someone who could, pump magic items out at maybe an earlier level. I know in later renditions of Dungeons and Dragons, if you will, that ability got easier and easier. And while I'm not a huge, I don't mind that much there being magic items. I actually prefer there being more magic items than less magic items. It just makes the game more fun, in my opinion. But another way to get them into the game, more tailor made for the players, so I don't have to do the work. Then the digitalologist, which is basically a numbers wizard, and I think they really kind of played them down. I think if you were, as they describe, a wizard who knew that much about magic and spell casting, you'd actually end up ruling the planet with your abilities. But obviously, they didn't want that. They just wanted to give them a little bit of a bonus and a little bit of, mathematician thrown in there to make it seem like they're just, you know, another basic type of wizard. The Go Lord, which I found kind of scary, thinking that anybody could actually want to be one of those, pulling their magic abilities directly from the negative energy plane. It just sounds like a great way to lose a character to evil, or better yet, a great way to base the powers of your evil, you know, arch villain of the party, your Doctor Doom, as it were. It would actually make for a new twist on the Necromancer. So I like the way that was included. The Jackal, I have mixed feelings about that. The Jackal is a wizard who steals his spells from other wizards' brains. And I find that to be a little perplexing, a little confusing, and a lot actually likely to result in tragedy for the thief, which is probably a good thing because stealing memories from people is just a horrific thought, and to have your character need that process to obtain any magic whatsoever just sounds like the making of a good old fashioned torch and pitchfork evening for that particular wizard at some point in his near future. The Mage Weaver, again, I think is better left as an NPC, a wizard who weaves his magic into tapestries and carpets and articles of clothing. Just seems like a character profession that is really not going to be very helpful. Sorry, we've got a group of monsters coming our way. Well, hold on, let me knit you a scarf. That just doesn't sound like, it's kind of like the Arduin Dreamweaver. Oh, the party needs help. Okay, I'm going to take a nap. It's really not a great idea to have your player character literally sit down to help the party. Nothing happens by just sitting around. The Mystics of Nog, another interesting take on various other types of wizards. Again, not one of my favorites. And the Spell Slayer, I think that it's actually going to be a rather popular kit for Advanced Dungeons and Dragons Second Edition. Not one of my favorites. I really like just the traditional. I find spells, I put them in my book, and now I've got an arsenal from which to choose from without any limitations or specializations. Just let me be a jack of all trades, and what I get, that's what I can use. If I have the option of picking out certain spells, me, I'm going to go for teleport long before I can cast it. because, as everybody knows, that's the greatest superpower ever. Chapter 3 is the Society's Sorceress. What medieval fantasy setting would be complete without a number of horrible guilds bent on world domination? Whether the player characters are the members of them or not, that's up to you. But as, again, with Arduin last month, I went over and over all of the different, secret societies for that particular world. So it's only fitting that a world like Qadim should have a number of its own twisted secret societies. Some of them bent on world domination, some of them bent on political power in a particular area of expertise or their nation or what have you, down to societies that just want to eliminate this type of group of people or this thought process or this religion or what have you. All of them just make for great storytelling, great bad guys that aren't another group of orcs or goblins or a dragon, but a huge organized group of humans and non-humans combined working together to mess with the plans of the player character party. And then at the very end of the book was chapter 4, new spells and proficiencies. Really only about 10 pages of new spells and proficiencies, and I'm guessing there must have been some time between producing both books, otherwise they could have just been lumped in another 10 pages to this book. Obviously it would have made this book a lot thinner, but it would have made this book just more complete and not having to go to this book for those half a dozen spells or proficiencies that, like I said, should have just been dumped into the main book. But maybe it really was, more than a year or so before they found or developed the new proficiencies and new extra spells. But all in all, these are two great books I recommend adding to anybody's Dungeons & Dragons collection, whether you're a first edition or second edition player, maybe even, third through fifth edition, you might get some use out of them. As you guys know, I'm not really a third, fourth, or fifth edition player. More a fan of first edition, and I don't see that ever changing. But you never know. I'm not too old to learn some new tricks. As a matter of fact, the older I get, the easier it seems to be to learn new stuff. Maybe it's the glorious results of a misspent youth. I'm not really sure, but from my humble opinion, I absolutely enjoyed the hell out of all of this information, adding it to my potential campaign worlds now and in the future. And as the rest of this month goes on, you'll see just how much of a benefit these books will be to your campaigns if you want to run an Arabian Nights style adventure or just campaign. Maybe even a one-shot, maybe the full-fledged 3-year campaign trudging through the desert. I hope you guys get as much of a kick out of it as I did, and I hope you guys will all join us for the rest of our Arabian Nights Ray Harryhausen themed adventures. And until next time, guys, have a great evening.